Hello, everyone. My name is Connor Moran. I'm the director of the Wisconsin Book Festival, and I could not be more delighted to be welcoming you to the first event of the fall celebration for Emma Straub's All Adults Here. Hi, Emma. Emma is joined today by Judy Mitchell. Judy is the author of A Reunion of Ghosts and was also one of Emma's professors when Emma was at the University of Wisconsin-Madison to get her MFA. It is just absolutely wonderful to be hosting the Wisconsin Book Festival, have Wisconsin authors and Wisconsin professors in conversation. That's really one of the main reasons why we're here. Also to celebrate wonderful books that are being created all over the country. And so thank you, Emma, for being all of those things all at once. Before we get started, as always, I want to thank Madison Public Library, the Madison Public Library Foundation, and all of our sponsors. Their dedication to the Wisconsin Book Festival this year, in addition to all of the other years, has been absolutely incredible. We really couldn't do it without them, and they have never lagged. They've never said, oh, do you think we should do this? They've said, absolutely, let's bring free cultural events to the people of Wisconsin. And so I want to just thank them here at the beginning. We have 16 events between now and 9:30 on Saturday night. I hope that you will tune in for many, many more. We have Nikki Giovanni tonight at 7. We have Angie Kim and Kylie Reed talking to another Wisconsin MFA, Dontiel Moniz, tonight. We have Andre Asaman, we have Kelly Jo Ford, and many, many other great literary events. So I will now step away, and you can take it away, Emma and Judy.
Thanks, Connor.
Thanks, Connor. Hi, Emma. It's
Hi,
so
Judy.
nice to see you. There is, you've taught, so you know the feeling when a student does what they came to your program dreaming of doing. And I hope it's still a dream for you, even in these difficult, fraught, crazy, oh, look, I'm running a bookstore. Oh, look, I'm the mother of 2 kids. Oh, look, I'm writing another book. Times that you're living in. But it's just thrilling for me.
I mean, writing, like right now, I feel like if you had said that to me at any point before the last 6 months, I would say, oh yeah, whatever. But like because of all of those other things in my life, I have not been able to work until now, like until my kids started some semblance of school. And I have missed it so much. And so right now, to me, writing fiction does seem like the dream. Like that is the dream. That is like the thing that I feel so like grateful that is even part of my job, and am so excited about having a chance to do more, hopefully someday.
I'm so glad you've been able to carve the space again. I didn't mean to jump in without properly introducing you, but I also want to do a very short, maybe perfunctory introduction, if you'll forgive me, because I really want to talk. So I was just going to, beautiful book. I was just going to read
Please.
what it says under your beautiful picture. It says that you are the New York Times bestselling author of 3 other novels, The Vacationers, Modern Lovers, and Laurel Mann's Life in Pictures, as well as the short story collection, Other People We Married. And you have another book that isn't there. Remember your little...
Flyover State. Thank you, Judy. I will say
that.
publishing something, even if it was just like one short story that was like this big, called Flyover State, like is like, in terms of my friends and relatives who are native Wisconsinites, that is the thing that I have gotten the most guff about in my life. Because even though it's clear that the person who says that in the story is not like in the right, even so, I have many friends who are like, so a flyover state. But flyover state exists within Other People We Married, so it's all in there.
I don't know. I have that book on my shelf, and it means a lot to me, because to me it was the first
Yeah, it was.
that went out. And it also says here that you and your fabulous husband, well, it doesn't say fabulous, but I'm throwing in fabulous. Mike is just an amazing designer. You own Books Are Magic, the
True.
fabulous independent bookstore in Brooklyn. And you do have two little boys who are 6, I want to say.
River is 7, newly 7, and Miles is 4.5, not 4.
Okay, I apologize to both because I know that's important. Um, yes, you don't want to get that wrong. And 4.5 is very important.
No.
It's huge difference. So I was thinking, like, what are we going to talk about? And this setup is really nice because I don't see any audience, so I can just pretend we're on the phone.
Yeah.
So I hope you don't mind if I start out this way, but today you you tweeted something about your dad who has some health issues, and your dad is Peter Straub, the very famous writer of horror, which is a word I don't like to say because it reveals that I come from Long Island. And I've always been interested about what that was like growing up with such a formidable and wonderful and generous, and we love you, Peter, if you're watching, and Susan, we love you too. Okay. What it was like, when did you want to become a writer? Did it have a lot to do with him? Did it have nothing to do with him? Was it intimidating or was it wonderful? What? Tell me.
Yeah, I mean, it was wonderful. It was wonderful, I think, because I think it was wonderful for a number of reasons. I think that, the first way that it was wonderful when I was really a small child is that both of my parents love books more than anything. But my dad would just make up stories all the time, just great, complicated stories that went on and on and on. And, like weird fairy tales, based on like a tree outside our house, like all kinds of just really imaginative stuff. And so I knew, like, from very early on that, like, that was a major bonus. And not that he would have had to have been a professional novelist in order to have been a good storyteller, but it was all sort of connected. And that was definitely a good thing. And then I think the older I got, I don't know, I think that the other thing about novelists that I think you'll probably agree with, is that we are a nosy, curious bunch. And so my dad has always been really interested in my friends and in my life and in, you know, not necessarily like all of the things that I was interested in. Like, I mean, he had like a passing knowledge of New Kids on the Block, and like, I mean, there were certain things he was more interested in than others. But in terms of people, like, he was always really interested in my people, and he really wanted to get to know everyone. Like when I was in high school, I mean, when I was in preschool, he would walk me to school, which is a few blocks away, and he would just stay hanging out with me and my 5-year-old friends until the teachers would be like, Peter, you have to leave now, which I recognize because that's what my kids' teachers, I mean, not right now, because we're not allowed inside, but in previous years, that has been very much my experience, where I'm like, okay, I want to know all of these kids, and I want to know who is great and inventive and fun, and who is a tiny little jerk who should not be anywhere near my child. And, like, I have really inserted myself into my children's friendships in ways that I hope they don't find off-putting. But then, and then, when I was in high school and college and all that, my dad was just always really sort of a part of my life in a social fun way. And then after that, like, I think that one thing that I mean, I've had a lot of legs up, certainly because my dad was a writer. Like I knew everybody and I had all these connections. But I think in terms of like the biggest leg up that I had because of him being a writer was that I had there was nothing romantic to me about being a writer. And I remember this, like, in the MFA program, I remember having this sort of conversation with people that, like, you know, like I always really just saw it as like a job, like, and I knew that it wasn't, there was no waiting for the muse, like that it wasn't, I don't know, it wasn't sexy. It was like being a banker or like working in a poultry factory. I don't know, like it was a pretty cushy job for sure, but it was still just a job that you had to do by yourself for like lots and lots of hours.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. It's a long job.
That was a very long answer, Judy.
Well, I like that answer. I'm fascinated with it. I want to continue with it. But it makes me think. I actually do have some notes here. I think I have. Oh, yeah. In the New York Times book review of All Adults Here, which was a very nice book review, Stephen Macaulay says, he talks about the way you write, and he says, he describes it as striking the match and patiently watching the fireworks. And I thought that was lovely, but I don't think that's what you do. I don't think you strike the match and then go, muse, take it away, entertain me. I'll just type. You're working.
That would be so nice though, wouldn't it? If you were just like, and then something else.
I always think, can't I just come up with the idea? Why do I have to do everything, every last thing? I mean, if I come up with the idea, why am I in charge of the commas?
Yeah.
It's too much. It's a job, but there's very little delegation.
That's the truth. That is the truth. Although I did say not with All Adults Here, but with Modern Lovers, for the first time I got into a real tug of war with a copy editor, where, speaking of commas, where the copy editor went through and really took out like every single comma. And my impulse always is to say, oh, well, like I'm a dope, so they're probably right. I can barely speak English. Like, what are the chances that my grammar and punctuation is right? And then, so I was sort of like going through being like, okay. And then I realized after a few pages that this person had gone through the entire book and taken out all of my commas, which totally affected the way the sentences read. And I said, no, those are mine. Those are my commas. And I put them all back in, probably extra ones too.
There are two in the title now.
Yeah.
There's one in my name. That's my name now. Yeah. That's, I mean, for me, every squiggle that I put on the page is there for a reason. I mean, I think about these things, and I know often the commas, the way I use them is wrong. If you care about that sort of thing. But part of, you're hearing a rhythm, here's how it's being said. And you can't whisper in the reader's ears, but you want to give them a hint.
Yeah. No, I think it's important, those little thingamabobs.
They They are. And getting them wrong sometimes, wrong,
Yeah.
is important too, I think. Having that control, the whole, I don't know, Oxford comma, that you can go on Twitter and find writers just, talking for days about how they feel about the Oxford comma and M dashes. And it matters. Every squiggle means something. Um, so, all right. So now you're in this wonderful environment in your house, and you have this idea of writing as a job. And did you go to Oberlin? Am I correct in that?
I did.
So were you a creative writing major?
I was a poet. I'd been a poet in high school. It was just what I loved the most. And I was a good poet in high school, I think, actually. And I published some things, published some poems, and then I decided, so then I went to college, and I don't know what happened. But I was a poetry major, but my poems were not good anymore. It wasn't, I don't know, it wasn't working. And I had some wonderful professors at Oberlin, some fabulous English professors and some fabulous creative writing professors, but the poetry professors at Oberlin all hated me. It was, it was not a match. And I think that happens sometimes. And so I don't, I mean, I don't think it's their fault that I was writing bad poems. But it just wasn't, I don't know, it wasn't the experience that I'd been having. And it made me really not feel like a poet anymore. And then when I graduated from Oberlin, I said to myself, well, okay, now I'm a novelist. And I immediately plotted out a novel and wrote that novel in 3 months. I wrote 25 pages a week, and I was a machine. I I had a job in publishing at the time. I was an editorial assistant, and I was very bad at that job, but I was very good at my self-designated job as a novelist. I mean, good in that I did it.
Yeah.
The
Hey, that's a big part of it.
Well, yeah. But yeah, that's really how it started, that I was like, oh, no. This is, let us put away childish things and get down to business. That was sort of my approach. And then over the next couple of years, I wrote 3 very bad novels. And then I said to myself, you know what might help this situation is an MFA. And that's when I moved in with you, Judy. And it made my life and my writing so much better.
It did. I kind of, I don't teach there anymore. I've retired. So
Yeah.
you could tell me. No one from the program is watching.
I will only tell you the truth, Judy. And the truth is that I think I showed up in Wisconsin like really ready. I felt really ready. I had all the work ethic I needed, and I had all the ambition that I needed, and I just needed some smart people to teach me some things and to be surrounded by people who were trying to do what I was doing. And it was magic. I loved every second of it.
Yeah.
I feel sorry for people who go to MFA program. I mean, first of all, I feel sorry for people who go to MFA programs where they're suddenly $200,000 in debt. And I also feel sorry for people who go to MFA programs like one that you might have gone to, where everybody's like pitted against each other and ranked, and you know, like, oh God, I'm only the 15th best writer here or whatever. That seems so demoralizing. And I just felt like I was in this warm, cozy pocket of support. And I, I feel like my writing got 50 times better immediately.
I'm happy to hear that. It does feel like magic because, I mean, I often ask students who tell me that their writing got better, or, I took your class and that changed everything. What did I do? What did I say? Because I don't know.
Oh,
Probably maybe just
I wish I had my notes in front of me, Judy, because I would tell you exactly what you said. But I mean, I think that, all of you, I mean, each of you had your own approach. And, I feel like every workshop that I had, I learned different things, and all of it together synthesized. That's my doorbell. My children are eating some pizza, or will be soon, but I don't have to answer the doorbell. Mike is going to answer the doorbell, and then it will stop ringing.
okay. Pizza, huh? Sounds good. Yeah, and I have to say, I went to Iowa, and for whatever reason, my particular year was just blessed with the nicest students. So I didn't have that Iowa experience that other people talked about back then.
Yeah.
But I know what you're talking about. And when we set up this program, we were determined for it to be a warm place with a lot of close mentoring, and I'm happy it worked.
Yeah.
So I'm going to jump to one of the questions, and we're going to move way forward in your career. So someone asks, can you tell us about getting selected for the Read with Jenna book club?
Yeah.
How did that feel, and when did you hear?
Okay, I will tell you. Everyone loves to ask about Jenna because Jenna's like, it's funny because I think depending on one's politics, in some ways, and sort of depending on one's age, people look at her different ways, right? But I met Jenna for the first time when I was going on the Today Show, just as a bookseller, to recommend some summer reading or something a few years ago. And at the Today Show, I'm sure it's different now with all the rules, but at the time, schlubs like me coming in off the street and people like her who obviously actually work there are all gussied up in the same room. So I was sitting there and somebody was trying to make my hair look not like this. And she was in the chair next to me. And I was being a very good New Yorker, absolutely pretending that I didn't see her, which seemed polite. And then and she sort of caught my eye in the mirror and immediately whipped around and said, "You're Emma Straub. I love your books." And I said, "Oh, well, okay then." And then we hit it off, and we became friendly. And it turns out, as the world knows now, that she is a great reader and she has great taste in books. I don't say that because she picked my book, but in general, she picks great books and she really reads them. She really chooses them. It's not like she does not have some committee of 16 people who are being like, "Oh, Jenna, what about this one?" Like it is really her picking these books. And as a bookseller, it is I won't name other names, but I will say that there are a lot of book clubs, and some of them push more copies than others. And Jenna's pushes the most copies.
Yeah.
And so when they told me that they were picking my book, I mean, I was sworn to secrecy, but I got to talk to her about it, and it just, I mean, I feel so grateful. I feel so grateful, and she's so supportive of writers and books. There was also one, she also came to the store once, to interview me, and she was doing like a whole segment on independent bookstores. And so she came and talked to me, and I made her cry twice, which, like, I don't know. I wasn't like going for it, but yeah. So I felt like I also could have a career in like Barbara Walters-y sort of journalism.
Okay, so emotional cry, not like.
Yeah, no, emotional, not like, Jenna, don't do that. Not like mean crying, but like, yeah, it was nice. But yeah, no, she is a force for good in the world, 100%. And I am very lucky that she chose me, because it meant that the book went home with a lot more people than it would have.
So let's talk about the book.
Okay.
I think someone has a question. It's a general question, but these questions are on the side, and I feel like I need to ask them because I'm afraid I'm going to miss them otherwise. So it says, both Judy and Emma write with what appears from the outside as ease. Yes, very much from the outside. Does not feel that way in my case from the inside, but thank you. How do you find the balance between straightforward storytelling and overly simplifying?
Whew. That's a hard question. Don't you think that's a hard question, Judy?
Yeah, I didn't make it up. I couldn't have made it up.
Yeah. And also, I feel like your books are way more complicated than mine. And so I don't know how. I don't know how you would answer that question.
Yeah, me either. Let's think about it. And if the answer comes up, we'll make Connor at the very end. He can answer that.
I mean, I guess what I will say is that I want my books to read easily. I want God, especially right now. I mean, I think that you know so many writers have different goals in mind, but mine has really always been to write books that people want to read for pleasure, like not books that they want to read because it's like the cool thing to read, or like because it'll, I don't know, because it's like infinite jest and they think it'll make them look smart to their potential mates. But because I don't know, because like that's the way I like to read, and so that is my goal. And so I think that if that, I'm going to take that question as a compliment.
I think it is.
Yeah. I mean, I think, yeah, I don't know. I guess my answer is that, like, I try to be as straightforward as possible. But I don't, yeah.
I'm not sure if this is what the question is getting at, but I think sometimes a pitfall for someone, or maybe in an early draft, could be that you're trying to create these characters and in a straightforward way that people can relate to, and maybe there's a fear of not going deep enough. Maybe that's what we mean by oversimplifying.
Mm-hmm.
That the characters don't become complicated enough. And maybe I'm interpreting it that way because I have a question I wanted to, or just wanted to talk to you about this. So, as I'm reading this book and earlier books, there are a couple of things that always occur to me. And one is, does she start with a place? Because the there's this thing in creative writing where we're always saying, oh, and the place is another character in the book. And I've sometimes had people say, what does that mean? And it's like, it doesn't mean anything. Don't worry about it. We say things like this. But in your books, the place is critical. Um, all you have to do is say to me, the vacationers, and I am in a pool, and water on the nape of my neck. It,
Yeah.
um, it's so wonderful. Like when I read your bio, it's like, and she wrote the vacationers. Ah, it's just, yeah. So, I mean, that takes place on Mallorca. I have no memory, but that's what I think where it takes place.
Yeah.
It's critically important. Um, if they had gone on vacation to, Kenya, it would have been a different book. And in this book, so it takes place in a small town in the Hudson Valley. And that town is so critically important. We learn where every store is. And I know, there's the diner and there's the pizza place, and I know what the box looks like, and there's the hairdresser, and there's the empty storefront that is very meaningful. What's going to go into that storefront and how do we feel about it? So do you start that way, or who came to you first in this book, or does that not work?
This book really started with cheese, and I am happy to
Please.
say that to a Wisconsin audience.
You had to say Jesus, and I was.
Oh, Jesus. No, it definitely didn't. It literally has nothing to do with Jesus. If someone reads this book and finds a line from it to Jesus, I would love to hear about it. Because I don't think that line is there, but there is a very big line.
Yes.
I had this, I mean, it sounds so goofy, and, we are what we are, right? So, but before I wrote Modern Lovers, I had two ideas. I had an idea, that was about these people and the sort of college friends and a band and this Brooklyn stuff. And then I had this idea about like what was like essentially a romance novel about cheese. And I was like, oh, I'll do the romance novel about cheese next. And I wrote Modern Lovers. And then I, like when I was done, I was like, okay, back to my notes. Oh, I'm writing a romance novel about cheese. And so it started. I mean, I knew I didn't want it to be in New York City again. I didn't want to write another New York City book in a row. And so but it had to be somewhere that I felt like I understood enough and could really conjure it like completely in my mind. And so I put it just a little bit up the Hudson and made up this town, because I mean, I will say that something that I've learned after writing a couple of books that did take place in very real towns and cities is that is the way to get disgruntled emails from what I'm going to guess are elderly gentlemen. Those emails are not from women. They're from men, and they want to tell you that when the character turns left, they're actually walking north. They're not walking south, as I say. And so I was like, you know what? I know a way around that problem, and I'm going to make up this town. And so I did sort of start with the town then. Like I had, a couple of characters, but I wasn't really sure what was going on. But I knew the feeling that I wanted. And so I did. I if I was a more artistic person, I would show you my drawings, but they're pathetic. And so
your drawings.
No, you can't, Judy. I'm sorry. I mean, basically they're like, basically they're like that. And then I would like, but I had maps.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess to me, especially, I mean, writing all adults here, I mean, it sounds funny because like my previous book was in Brooklyn where I live. And so theoretically much closer to my, daily experience, but it's not at all. I mean, my life is like this is my life because, I live in this neighborhood where I also went to high school, and my parents live 2 blocks away, and my kids go to the school that I went to, and my bookstore is a few blocks that way. And so I see people from all different parts of my life on the sidewalk every day. And it's this wonderful community experience where I truly feel of this place. And sometimes you're like, oh, that guy, like, why do I still have to see that guy on the street when he said that thing to me when I was 16 and it made me really mad, and here we are, that kind of thing.
Right.
And so that's what I was thinking about with Clapham. It was like, how do I make my very tight existence a whole town?
And you did. And so I see somebody, first of all, the person who asked about simplifying says, yes, it was a compliment. So thank you. And then while I was asking you the question about place, someone else was simultaneously asking if the book started with a character. So no, we now know the answer. It started with cheese, which is how every book should start from now on. Cheese and goats. There are goats in this book. So if you have any hesitation, goats. But the question goes on to say, do you have a favorite character in the book? And people also ask if any of the characters are you.
I mean, people love to ask that, and I don't know, Amy, whose last name I'm going to mispronounce, but you can probably say it properly.
That's it. Is that who we're talking about?
Yes.
Yes.
She posted one of her poems yesterday that was just perfect, where in the poem she says, like, people ask if the boyfriends in my poems are my real boyfriends, and the answer is no and yes. And I just thought that is exactly it. And I think that one thing that is true in this book and in all of my other books is that there's always a real range of ages and stages in my characters. And I think that people often, and not out of like, laziness or anything, but people often like zero in on the character that seems like to have the most in common, the most like sort of details in common. So, like in this book, there's one character who's like, in her late 30s and pregnant. And I think, just on paper, right, that's closest to where I am. But I mean, but I'm in all of them. Of course. And that's what's so much fun about writing fiction. And that's why it's so hilarious to me when, I don't know. I mean, sometimes I write a book. I don't know if you feel this way, Judy, and you think like, and someone like doesn't necessarily understand something about you, like something personal about you. And you're like, didn't you read my book that had literally nothing to do with this, but it's so clear what inside my soul?
Yeah, it's the dance with readers are interesting because when I'm a reader, I do and ask all the things readers do and ask, and when I'm a writer, I'm I don't know. I just have this idea of it's art. You know,
Yeah.
it's art. Yeah, she looks like me, talks like me, went to the same school as me, but no, no, no. It's complicated, right? It is yes, no.
Yeah, yes and no.
And no. It's the answer to most things.
Yeah.
Um, so I want to ask before I go back to audience questions. One thing that really strikes me about your work, and I hope I don't sound like a creative writing teacher here, but your work is it's very plotted, but it's not to me plot driven. There's a plot. It's not just people meeting and talking, but the characters just become what matters. And you do interiority, giving us the characters' inner lives um, so beautifully, just so beautifully. At the very beginning of the book, um, so I think I can say this because this is how the book begins. Somebody gets hit by a bus.
It's the first sentence. It's the first sentence. So it's all right.
I'm not ruining anything. Somebody gets hit, we always say, oh, I'm going to probably get hit by a bus. Well, she does. This person does. She gets hit by a school bus. The school bus doesn't have children in it, just the driver. And most books that start that way, there would be a through story about finding out what in the world was going on with the driver. Did he aim for her? Did he or she aim for the person who gets killed? Was it intentional? What's going on with them? How are they feeling? But that doesn't happen. But immediately what happens is we get into the head of a character and he goes off, and I typed the whole thing out. Yeah, it's the character of Elliot. And when Elliot hears about it and he starts thinking about how many times members of his family had been at that same spot on the roundabout, and it becomes very interior and it becomes his life. And I love that. And now that I've said all that, what do you think about how you do that?
Well, I mean, so it's I had forgotten about it really until you just were talking, Judy. But when I was, I don't know what your process is like in terms of plotting your books, but I have a time honored process of fooling myself into knowing what I was going to happen. So I have like a very basic, very bare bones Word document that's like, Barbara gets hit by a bus. Astrid goes salon. But maybe not even that. I don't know, but very, like that. And in my early thoughts about this book, Astrid was gonna track down this driver, and it was gonna be this whole like sort of like Miss Marple kind of energy.
Mhm.
But then I realized that I didn't care about that. That it didn't matter. Like that it was like I liked the crunch at the beginning, but that I wasn't interested in that storyline. And so I just left it, and I think,
Yeah, and it worked. I never, until I started reading it for a second time, thought, oh, yeah, what about the bus driver? And then I realized I don't care. I don't care. It's not the bus driver's story. That's someone else can write that book. It's the strict story.
yeah.
Um, and but you just move us, but you do it by really plumbing each individual character who have the family members have similar voices, but different voices. I think that's your, like, it's such a gift. And we're getting close to the end, and there's some really important questions. One is, as a person who came out as trans in high school, I was astonished by how loving and careful and accurate the treatment and writing of the character of Robin was. How did you, as a cis adult, navigate writing that character?
Well, first of all, thank you. Thank you, person writing that question. I appreciate that. I mean, I will tell you that I have never, I don't know how many characters I've written so many characters who have identities that are different than mine. And it has never been more important to me to do it right and respectfully than with this character. I mean, it mattered to me more than anything else in this book, really. The pizza's from Layla Jones, Connor. But yeah, it mattered to me so much. And I think part of the sort of project of this book, or part of like the feeling that I was trying to explore, was how in a family that one would describe from the outside as like a close, loving, liberal family, how different the generations are when it comes to enormous like building blocks of identity. And I think that Astrid is nearly 70 and comes out as bisexual, and to her it's a little herky jerky. Like she's not sure about it. She's happily in her relationship, but she's not talking about that part of her identity does not come naturally to her at all. And Astrid certainly never had a conversation. I mean, so much of the book is about her inability to talk about sexuality and feelings, really, with her children when they were younger. And then the middle generation, which is sort of my generation, it fluctuates. Like there are some people who are more able to think and talk about identity, and some that are a little more stuck. And then there are the kids. And as I have certainly observed in my own family and in many families around me, if you give kids a chance to talk about gender with no judgment and no like pretend framework that they're supposed to fit into, I mean, you get really different answers than you would from like talking to a 40-year-old person or a 70-year-old person. And I mean, just like personally in my family, River, my 7-year-old, told I'll use he him pronouns because that's what River likes most of the time, but not always. But when he was 4, he was like, I have no gender. Like, what are you, stupid? What is that? That's a scam. Just like Pokemon, I don't have a gender. And I was like, okay, cool. And like starting then, I mean, I have just had so many more conversations with my kids about gender than I ever have with my parents. Although at my mom's 75th birthday a couple of years ago, I very like boorishly dominated the conversation for a long time, like explaining the difference to my parents between sexuality and gender, which like is very clear to me, but they were like, what? So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, I think. Well, I think so. And the other important thing that I wanted to address is the person who asks about mother's guilt. I
Uh-huh.
think all mothers feel like they have somehow damaged their children by doing or not doing something as the children are growing up. And how did it end up as a theme in your book?
Yes. I mean, I think that yes, I do. I mean, I think that, I mean, there's no way around it really. I think that, and it's not, I think that, sure, I think sometimes mothers, just like all other humans, feel guilty about actual things that they have done or not done. But I think that the pressure that is put on mothers right now, or like, I mean, I will say caregivers and, parents, but mostly mothers. I mean, it's just insane. It's just insane how we are all supposed to balance everything. And like, I think that I've always been really privileged that I can balance, because of the nature of my work, both as a writer and at the bookstore. I have made it a priority to do both, to like to be a professional in these various ways, and to have real big chunks of time with my kids every day. But it does, when I talked about writing my first book and writing 25 pages a week, can't do that anymore. And so I always feel guilty in one direction or another, or most often both. And so, I mean, I think it ended up as part of my book because it's something that I am obsessed with, like, I'm obsessed with thinking about all the things that I've done wrong, or and knowing that all of the things that I worry about doing wrong aren't necessarily the things that in 25 years my children are going to be in therapy complaining about, like they're going to be in therapy complaining about something else. So I just have to do my best.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of, I think, one of the things at the heart of the book is that as Astrid explores her own capacity to love her children, she starts looking at her children. And I like Astrid, she's about my age. And I like that she doesn't stop. Her journey doesn't stop. People think, oh, you're reaching 70, why are you still bothering us? But she's still finding love, and she's still thinking about how to make it better
Yeah.
with her children. And in some ways, it takes up a small part of real estate in the book, but the reason for her not particularly liking the woman who gets hit by the bus and some of her feelings, we find out there's a connection there. That you need to go read the book just to find that connection and the route to forgiveness, and also sort of the comfort in a way that the things we worry about maybe get, I don't know, covered by the love we give. Do I sound like an old Beatles song now?
I hope so. I hope so, Judy. That sounds good to me. I'm gonna go with it.
So maybe we can end on that. Emma, can we do this again tomorrow?
I'm free. I'm free every day as long as yeah, as long as you don't mind me like
I do wish I could fly there and babysit for you one day so you could just go off and work on the next book. And I'd love to have pizza with the
yeah.
kids. And so I'm going to thank you for doing this. And I'm going to thank Connor for making it possible. Any other reunions for me you want to schedule, Connor? Here I am. Emma, such a beautiful book.
Oh, thank you, Judy. Thank you. Thank you guys. I just
And give my love to your dad.
I will.
Judy, you can never read. You just email me and we'll set up a reunion for whoever you want. And it can be Emma every day. That's fine. Emma, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for this book and all of your books. And for opening this year's fall celebration. It's a weird year, and we're so delighted that we could be with both of you. So thank you so much. Thank you to everyone at home. I put link to Books Are Magic in the chat for you. I also have a link to go directly and purchase Emma's book. Emma is able to be here today because we're such a great audience and because we buy the book. So please do if you can. We have another event coming up in just half an hour with Miles Harvey for the King of Convenience, which is a crazy story about how the Mormon Church almost had its home in Lake Michigan rather than in Utah. And then at 7 o'clock, we have Nikki Giovanni for her latest collection of poetry and prose, talking to Kiese Lehman about her book Make Me Rain. And then finally, at 8:30 tonight, we'll have Angie Kim for her book Miracle Creek and Kylie Reed for her book Such a Fun Age, in conversation with, as I mentioned, Dantiel Moniz, who is also an MFA candidate or graduate from here. Emma, I did get a question. What year did you get your MFA here at Wisconsin?
God, that's a math problem. 2008.
Okay, great. Well, we're so glad that you did, and so glad that you were with us tonight. Thank you so much. We look forward to seeing you again sometime soon. Bye, everybody.